Hi, I'm Michelle and welcome to my channel. Have you ever had that quiet, unsettling moment in the middle of a perfectly normal day where you think, wait, is this the life I actually want, or is it the life I ended up with? That question feels louder for a lot of women because we're waking up to the difference between living by default and living by design. The distinction between a life you build and a life you design often comes down to one thing. Are you following a script you inherited, or are you working from a blueprint that belongs to you? When I say the life you built, I'm not criticizing it. For many of us, that life is made of hard work, responsibility, loyalty, and resilience. It's the result of showing up, keeping things running, and doing what needed to be done. You built stability, you handled the practical things, and you collected the standard pieces that we were told make a good life. A job, a routine, home, savings, commitments, relationships, a calendar full of obligations. And sometimes it all looks exactly the way it's supposed to look. The problem is that supposed to can become a trap, because you can have all the pieces in place and still feel like something is missing. A life you built often comes from following established societal paths without questioning whether they fit you. It's shaped by expectations from parents, culture, and community. And it's influenced by what you were told success looks like, what a responsible person does, and what a good woman should prioritize, and what milestones you should hit by certain ages. And it's not that those things are always wrong, it's that they're external. The default life tends to form through reaction. You respond to circumstances, to needs, to what's urgent, to what's expected next. Over time, you become very good at functioning, achieving, and maintaining. But somewhere along the way, you might realize you haven't been choosing as much as you've been complying. That's usually when a certain feeling creeps in. It's not always dramatic, and it's not always a breakdown. It can be subtle, like restlessness or a constant low-grade sense of, is this it? Or you can feel stuck even when nothing is technically wrong. You can feel unmotivated even when you have plenty to be grateful for. You could feel like you're living a life that looks impressive on paper but doesn't feel authentic in your body. It's like living in a beautifully furnished house that someone else decorated. Everything is fine, but nothing feels like you. The confusing part is that when you start noticing that feeling, you might assume the solution is to make some massive change. You might think you need to blow everything up, reinvent your whole identity, or start completely over. But most of the time, that's not the answer. The shift from default to design usually starts much smaller. It starts when you stop running on autopilot and begin paying attention. This is the first time in my life where my days aren't being directed by a job or a partner, raising children, or managing a household in the way that I used to. It's basically just me and my dog, and the only non-negotiable thing is keeping us both fed, safe, and okay. I won't lie, there are days that freedom feels almost unreal. I catch myself thinking, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Not because I'm bored, but because I was so used to my life being organized around something external that needs me. Now I get to direct my days based on my own decision and what actually feels good to me. That's incredibly exciting, but it can also be a little bit scary because there's this new voice that whispers, what if I choose wrong? In the past, when a problem crept up, something with my business, my home, my family, there was usually a clear fix, a logical next step, or a decision that basically made itself. But now the choices I'm making aren't about solving a crisis or meeting an expectation. They're about building a life that I genuinely enjoy, and that's a different kind of responsibility. Designing a life is different because it treats your future like something that you can shape, not just something that you endure, or an end goal that you're trying to achieve. It's rooted in the idea that your life is not a fixed identity you must defend. It's a living, evolving project that you can refine. Intentional life design borrows from design thinking, which is basically a fancy way of saying you try things, you learn, you adjust. You don't need a perfect plan that locks you in for the next decade. You need a direction that feels true and a willingness to experiment your way forward. It's less about finding one right path and more about building a relationship with yourself where you trust your ability to choose. A designed life begins with different questions. Instead of asking, "What should I do next?" you start asking, "What kind of person am I becoming?" Instead of focusing on what looks impressive, you start focusing on what makes you feel alive. And instead of organizing your decisions around fear of judgment, fear of risk, fear of disappointing people, you organize them around values. And one of the biggest changes is that you begin to care about how you want your life to feel, not just what you want your life to produce. Because you can hit goals and still feel empty if the goals were never truly yours. And that's why I'm trying wayfinding. Wayfinding is the opposite of a rigid 10-year plan. It means you move forward without needing the whole map. You pay attention, you notice what gives you energy and what drains it. You follow what fits and you course correct, and you learn. Careers shift, relationships shift, our health changes, and our responsibilities evolve, and our identities deepen. The most grounded people aren't always the ones with the most detailed plans. They're the ones who know how to design and redesign as life changes. So how do you actually begin making that shift? Start by noticing where you're on default. That doesn't require shame and it doesn't require drama. It requires honesty. Look at your days and ask yourself, what parts of my life feel chosen and what parts feel inherited? Pay attention to what you do out of obligation and what you do out of genuine desire. Pay attention to the moments that you feel most like yourself and the moments that you feel you're performing. That awareness alone can be life-changing, because once you see the default script, it's hard to unsee it. From there, start defining what matters to you now in this season, not what mattered 10 years ago, and not what matters to the people around you. What do you value? What do you want more of in your daily life? And what do you want less of? Then choose one small experiment, not a giant leap, just a real-life test. Try something for 2 weeks that supports the version of you that you're becoming. Maybe it's a new routine, a class, a creative practice, a boundary, or a change in your environment. The point isn't to get it perfect. The point is to gather information. After 2 weeks, you'll know more than you know right now. And that's how design works. You learn by living. And there's something important. Designing your life isn't only about adding things. Sometimes it's about removing what no longer fits. A designed life often requires a kind of no, not a harsh, but a clear one. You become less available for what drains you, and what you've outgrown, and what you do purely to keep the peace. You start protecting your time and energy like they matter, because they do. Every boundary you set is choosing your blueprint over the default script. A life you built can be admirable, but a life you design is yours. And you don't have to burn down your life to redesign it. You can start with one honest realization and one small choice that feels like you. The goal isn't to create a flawless life. The goal is to create a life that fits, one that reflects your values in your season, your spirit, and who you're becoming. Where do you feel like you've been living by default? And what would you design differently? Thank you so much for watching.